Section 47 of A Popular History of France, Volume 4. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Kathy Barrett. A Popular History of France from the Earliest Times, Volume 4, by François Guizot. Translated by Robert Black. Chapter 34. Henry III and the Religious Wars, 1574 to 1589, Part 2. It was the increasing preponderance of the Guises, at court as well as in the country, which caused the two princes to take this sudden resolution. Since Henry III's coming to the throne, war had gone on between the Catholics and the Protestants, but languidly and with frequent suspensions through local and short-lived truces. The king and the queen mother would have been very glad that the St. Bartholomew should be short-lived also, as a necessary but transitory crisis. It had rid them of their most formidable adversaries, Coligny and the Reformers of note who were about him. Henry and Catherine aspired to no more than resuming their policy of manoeuvring and wavering between the two parties engaged in the struggle; but it was not for so poor a result that the ardent Catholics had committed the crime of the St. Bartholomew. They promised themselves from it the decisive victory of their church and of their supremacy. Henry de Guise came forward as their leader in this grand design. There are to be read, beneath a portrait of him done in the 16th century, these verses, also of that date: "The virtue, greatness, wisdom from on high, of yonder duke, triumphant far and near, do make bad men to shrink with coward fear, and God's own Catholic Church to fructify. In armor clad, like maddened Mars he moves; the trembling Huguenot cowers at his glance. A prop for Holy Church is his good lance; his eye is ever mild to those he loves." Guise cultivated very carefully this ardent confidence on the part of Catholic France. He recommended to his partisans attention to little pious and popular practices. "I send you some paternosters," meaning, in the plural, the beads of a chaplet, or the chaplet entire. He wrote to his wife, Catherine of Cleves, "You will have strings made for them, and string them together. I don't know whether you dare offer some of them to the queens and to my lady mother. Ask advice of Mesdames de Retz and de Villeroy about it." The flight and insurrection of the Duke of Anjou and the King of Navarre furnished the Duke of Guise with a very natural occasion for re-engaging in the great struggle between Catholicism and Protestantism, wherein the chief part belonged to him. Let us recur for a moment to the origin of that struggle and the part taken in it at the outset by the princes of the house of Lorraine. "As early as the year 1562, 26 years before the affair of the barricades," says M. Vitet in the excellent introduction which he has put at the head of his beautiful historic dramas from the last half of the 16th century, "Cardinal Charles of Lorraine, being at the Council of Trent, conceived the plan of a Holy League, or association of Catholics, which was to have the triple object of defending by armed force the Romish Church in France, of obtaining for the cardinal's brother, Duke Francis de Guise, the lieutenant generalship of the kingdom, and of helping him to ascend the throne, in case the line of the Valois should become extinct. The death of Duke Francis, murdered in front of Orleans by Poltrot, did not permit the cardinal to carry out his plan. 5 years afterwards, Henry de Guise, eldest son of Francis, and then 18 years of age, caused to be drawn up, for the first time, a form of oath whereby the dignitaries bound themselves to sacrifice their goods and lives in defence of the Catholic religion in the face of and against all, except the king, the royal family, and the princes of their connection. This form was signed by the nobility of Champagne and Brie, a province of which Henry de Guise was governor, and on the 25th of July, 1568, the bishop and the clergy of Troyes signed it likewise. The association is named in the form Holy League, Christian and Royal. Up to the year 1576 it remained secret, and did not cross the boundaries of Champagne. To this summary of M. Vitet's may be added that, independently of the Champagnese League of 1568, and in the interval between 1568 and 1575, there had been formed, in some provinces and towns, other local associations for the defence of the Catholic Church against the heretics. When, in 1575, first the Duke of Anjou and after him the King of Navarre were seen flying from the court of Henry III., and commencing an insurrection with the aid of a considerable body of German auxiliaries and French refugees, already on French soil and on their way across Champagne, the peril of the Catholic Church appeared so grave and so urgent that in the threatened provinces the Catholics devoted themselves with ardor to the formation of a grand association for the defence of their cause. Then and thus was really born the League, secret at first, but before long publicly and openly proclaimed, which held so important a place in the history of the 16th century. Picardy and Champagne were the first scene of its formation. But in the neighboring provinces the same travail took place and brought forth fruits. At Paris, a burgess named La Roche Blanc, and devoted to the Guises, a perfumer named Peter de la Bruyere, and his son Mathieu de la Bruyere, councillor at the Chatelet, were, says de Thou, the first and most zealous preachers of the Union. "At their solicitation," continues the austere magistrate, "all the debauchees were there in this great city, all folks whose only hope was in civil war for the indulgence of their libertinism, or for a safe means of satisfying their avarice or their ambition, enrolled themselves emulously in this force. Many, even of the richest burgesses, whose hatred for Protestants blinded them so far as not to see the dangers to which such associations expose public tranquillity in a well regulated state, had the weakness to join the seditious." Many asked for time to consider, and before making any engagement they went to see President de Thou, informed him of these secret assemblies and all that went on there, and begged him to tell them whether he approved of them, and whether it was true that the court authorized them. M. de Thou answered them at once, with the straightforwardness which was innate in him, that these kinds of proceedings had not yet come to his knowledge, that he doubted whether they had the approbation of his Majesty, and that they would do wisely to hold aloof from all such associations. The authority of this great man began to throw suspicion upon the designs of the Unionists, and his reply prevented many persons from casting in their lot with the party. But they who found themselves at the head of this faction were not the folks to so easily give up their projects, for they felt themselves too well supported at court and amongst the people. They advised the Lorraine princes to have the Union promulgated in the provinces, and to labor to make the nobility of the kingdom enter it. Henry de Guise did not hesitate. At the same time that he avowed the League and labored to propagate it, he did what was far more effectual for its success: he entered the field and gained a victory. The German allies and French refugees who had come to support Prince Henry de Conde and the Duke of Anjou in their insurrection advanced into Champagne. Guise had nothing ready, neither army nor money. He mustered in haste 3,000 horse, who were to be followed by a body of foot and a moiety of the king's guards. "I haven't a son," he wrote to his wife; "take some out of the king's chest, if there is anything there. Provided you know that there is something there, don't be afraid; take it and send it me at once. As for the Reîtres, they are more afraid of us than we of them. Don't be frightened about them on my account. The greatest danger I shall run will be that a glass of wine may break in my hand." He set out in pursuit of the Germans, came up with them on the 10th of October, 1575, at Port Robinson, on the Marne, and ordered them to be attacked by his brother, the Duke of Mayenne, whom he supported vigorously. They were broken and routed. The hunt, according to the expression at the time, lasted all the rest of the day and during the night. "A world of dead covers the field of battle," wrote Guise. He had himself been wounded. He went in obstinate pursuit of a mounted foe whom he had twice touched with his sword, and who, in return, had fired 2 pistol shots, of which one took effect in the leg, and the other carried away part of his cheek and his left ear. Thence came his name of Henry the Scarred, le Balafré, which has clung to him in history. Scarcely 4 years had rolled away since St. Bartholomew. In vain had been the massacre of 10,000 Protestants, according to the lowest, and of 100,000 according to the highest estimates, besides nearly all the renowned chiefs of the party. Charles IX.'s earnest prayer, "that none remained to reproach me," was so far from accomplishment that the war between Catholicism and Protestantism recommenced in almost every part of France with redoubled passion, with a new importance of character, and with symptoms of much longer duration than at its first outbreak. Both parties had found leaders made, both from their position and their capacity to command them. Admiral Coligny was succeeded by the King of Navarre, who was destined to become Henry IV., and Duke Francis of Guise by his son Henry, if not as able, at any rate as brave a soldier, and a more determined Catholic than he. Amongst the Protestants, Sully and Du Plessis-Mornay were assuming shape and importance by the side of the King of Navarre. Catherine de' Medici placed at her son's service her Italian adroitness, her maternal devotion, and an energy rare for a woman between 60 and 70 years of age, for 43 years a queen, and worn out by intrigue and business and pleasure. Finally, to the question of religion, the primary cause of the struggle, was added a question of kingship, kept in the background, but ever present in thought and deed: which of the three houses of Valois, Bourbon, and Lorraine should remain in or enter upon the possession of the throne of France. The interests and the ambition of families and of individuals were playing their part simultaneously with the controversies and the passions of creed. This state of things continued for 12 years, from 1576 to 1588, with constant alternations of war, truce, and precarious peace, and in the midst of constant hesitation, on the part of Henry III., between alliance with the League, commanded by the Duke of Guise, and adjustment with the Protestants, of whom the King of Navarre was every day becoming the more and more avowed leader. Between 1576 and 1580, 4 treaties of peace were concluded. In 1576, the peace called Monsieur's, signed at Chastenay in Orleanness. In 1577, the peace of Bergerac, or of Poitiers. In 1579, the peace of Nerac. In 1580, the peace of Flèche in Périgord. In November 1578, the States General were convoked and assembled at Blois, where they sat and deliberated up to March 1577, without any important result. Neither these diplomatic conventions nor these national assemblies had force enough to establish a real and lasting peace between the two parties, for the parties themselves would not have it. In vain did Henry III. Make concessions and promises of liberty to the Protestants. He was not in a condition to guarantee their execution and make it respected by their adversaries. At heart, neither Protestants nor Catholics were for accepting mutual liberty. Not only did they both consider themselves in possession of all religious truth, but they also considered themselves entitled to impose it by force upon their adversaries. The discovery, and the term is used advisedly, so slow to come and so long awaited has been the fact which it expresses, the discovery of the legitimate separation between the intellectual world and the political world, and of the necessity also of having the intellectual world free in order that it may not make upon the political world a war, which, in the inevitable contact between them, the latter could not support for long, this grand and salutary discovery, be it repeated, and its practical influence in the government of people, cannot be realized save in communities already highly enlightened and politically well ordered. Good order, politically, is indispensable if liberty, intellectually, is to develop itself regularly and do the community more good than it causes of trouble and embarrassment. They only who have confidence in human intelligence sincerely admit its right to freedom; and confidence in human intelligence is possible only in the midst of a political regimen which likewise gives the human community the guarantees whereof its interests and its lasting security have absolute need. The 16th century was a long way from these conditions of harmony between the intellectual world and the political world, the necessity of which is beginning to be understood and admitted by only the most civilized and best governed among modern communities. It is one of the most tardy and difficult advances that people have to accomplish in their life of labor. The 16th century helped France to make considerable strides in civilization and intellectual development. But the 18th and 19th have taught her how great still, in the art of governing and being governed as a free people, are her children's want of foresight and inexperience, and to what extent they require a strong and sound organization of political freedom, in order that they may, without danger, enjoy intellectual freedom, its pleasures and its glories. From 1576 to 1588, Henry III. Had seen the difficulties of his government continuing and increasing. His attempt to maintain his own independence and the mastery of the situation between Catholics and Protestants by making concessions and promises at one time to the former and at another to the latter had not succeeded; and in 1584 it became still more difficult to practise. On the 10th of June in that year, Henry III.'s brother, the Duke of Anjou, died at Chateau Thierry. By this death the leader of the Protestants, Henry, King of Navarre, became lawful heir to the throne of France. The Leaguers could not stomach that prospect. The Guises turned it to formidable account. They did not hesitate to make the future of France a subject of negotiation with Philip II. Of Spain, at that time her most dangerous enemy in Europe. By a secret convention concluded at Joinville on the 31st of December, 1584, between Philip and the Guises, it was stipulated that at the death of Henry III. The crown should pass to Charles, Cardinal of Bourbon, 64 years of age, the King of Navarre's uncle, who, in order to make himself king, undertook to set aside his nephew's hereditary right, and forbid absolutely heretical worship in France. He published on the 31st of March, 1585, a declaration wherein he styled himself Premier Prince of the Blood, and conferred upon the Duke of Guise the title of Lieutenant General of the League. By a bull of September 10, 1585, Sixtus V., but lately elected pope, excommunicated the King of Navarre as a heretic, and relapsed, denying him any right of succession to the crown of France, and releasing his Navarrese subjects from their oath of fidelity. Sixtus V. did not yet know what manner of man he was thus attacking. The King of Navarre did not confine himself to protesting in France, on the 10th of June, 1585, against this act of the pope's. He had his protest placarded at Rome itself upon the statues of Pasquin and Marforio, and at the very doors of the Vatican, referring the pope, as to the question of heresy, to a council which he claimed at an early date, and at the same time appealing against this alleged abuse of power to the Court of Peers of France, "of whom," said he, "I have the honor to be the premier." The whole of Italy, including Sixtus V. himself, a pope of independent mind and proud heart, was struck with this energetic resistance on the part of a petty king. "It would be a good thing," said the pope to Marquis Pasani, Henry III.'s ambassador, "if the king your master showed as much resolution against his enemies as the King of Navarre shows against those who attack him." At the first moment, Henry III. Had appeared to unravel the intentions of the League and to be disposed to resist it. By an edict of March 28, 1585, he had ordered that its adherents should be prosecuted. But Catherine de' Medici frightened him with the war which would infallibly be kindled, and in which he would have for enemies all the Catholics, more irritated than ever; and Henry III. very easily took fright. Catherine undertook to manage the recoil for him. "I care not who likes it and who doesn't," she was wont to say in such cases. She asked the Duke of Guise for an interview, which took place, first of all at Epernay, and afterwards at Rheims. The hard demands of the Lorrainers did not deter the queen mother, and on the 7th of July, 1585, a treaty was concluded at Nemours between Henry III. And the League, to the effect "that by an irrevocable edict the practice of the new religion should be forbidden, and that there should henceforth be no other practice of religion throughout the realm of France save that of the Catholic, Apostolic, and Roman; that all the ministers should depart from the kingdom within a month; that all the subjects of his Majesty should be bound to live according to the Catholic religion, and make profession thereof within 6 months, on pain of confiscation both of person and goods; that heretics, of whatsoever quality they might be, should be declared incapable of holding benefices, public offices, positions, and dignities; that the places which had been given in guardianship to them for their security should be taken back again forthwith; and lastly, that the princes designated in the treaty, amongst whom were all the Guises at the top, should receive as guarantee certain places to be held by them for 5 years." This treaty was signed by all the negotiators, and specially by the queen mother, the Cardinals of Bourbon and Guise, and the Dukes of Guise and Mayenne. It was the decisive act which made the war a war of religion. Section 47.